These are powerful stories about the impact a cancer diagnosis can have. And we thank all of you who shared your story for that video deeply and your deeply personal cancer journey. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you another man who has a story that is deeply personal and moving. As a former professional athlete, I understand the sacrifice it takes to get to the highest level. But what luckily I never experienced is what this man went through, to have it all ripped away because of cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a warm welcome for my new friend, Dave Dravecky.
Dave Dravecky, the famous pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, a 21st round draft pick who fought his way up the ranks to national stardom.
Growing up, I had two heroes, Sandy Koufax and Vida Blue. They were left-handed pitchers. All I cared about as a little kid was I wanted to throw a baseball like they did.
I would have to say he was a tremendous competitor. He had this tremendous desire to win.
Some people are born with just gobs of talent, but they only use about this much. And with David had this much, and Dave used it to the full extent.
At the zenith of his amazing Major League odyssey, Dave's doctors noticed a strange lump forming.
Finally, they said, okay, let's just get it checked. And so we went to the doctor and had an MRI.
We were in the waiting room waiting for the doctors to come back and talk to us. And outside of the room, we heard the doctors fooling around with the film, slapping it up on the thing. And then all of a sudden, the doctor said, oh my goodness, look at that tumor.
It was cancer in his left arm, his pitching arm.
And so the doctors came in and told him they believed he had a fibroid tumor at the base of his deltoid muscle. They would have to remove it, along with 50% of his deltoid muscle.
The doctors said Dave Dravecky would never pitch again. But 10 months after the removal of cancer from his arm...
You don't ever use the word finish when you talk about Dave Dravecky, because he's never finished.
He stood on the mound in Candlestick Park on August 10th, 1989, and he stood there in amazement.
The magnitude of that night is unreal. It was like more like a World Series game, the 7th game of the World Series. And he got a stand ovation when he walked down by the bullpen. When he first started warming up, he got a stand ovation when he finished. He got a stand ovation when he went to the mound. It was just incredible to sit there. I didn't really manage that game. I just sat there in awe.
Dave returned to the mound to pitch 8 electrifying innings for the Giants, leading them to victory. But then, 5 days later, on the mound against Montreal, Dave Dravecky threw the pitch heard round the world.
The 6th inning, and I'm back out on the mound, and I rear back to throw a fastball to Tim Raines, who's at the plate. And all of a sudden, as I let go of that pitch, my left arm snaps in half.
Here's the pitch, and Dravecky falls over.
This incredible explosion in my left ear from releasing that fastball and my arm snapping in half. And I went falling to the ground, almost went and shot. There was something going on in my life that was a whole lot bigger than baseball. So much bigger than baseball.
Dravecky stumbled on the mound. He threw a wild pitch. Hank, he's holding his shoulder.
He was checked by the doctors, and they told him the tumor had returned.
His left arm shattered, along with his dreams of a major league comeback. The man with the miracle arm must now face the future as an amputee.
Baseball was just a stepping stone to something much greater.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, man. Thank you, Buffalo. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was telling Steve backstage that I really don't know how I'm going to get through this in the next 10 minutes because I was overwhelmed by what I just experienced. What you all are doing here is, it's unbelievable. Gosh, when I was a kid growing up, I was always told, don't cry. You know what, folks? This isn't about me. This is about all of you. And this is about the ride. And this is about Roswell. And this is about some amazing people who care deeply about their community. That's what this is about tonight. That's what it's about tomorrow. I came here to tell you a story. And I don't have time to tell you that story because of everything that's going on in my mind and my heart right now about what I want to say. Our book is available over there. Please pick it up and read the story. And by the way, I did sign every one of those books, so it's going to be an autographed copy. One of the things that I think about right now as I'm standing here before you is a dream that I had. And that dream was to become a Major League Baseball player, and I saw that dream come true. And it was an incredible experience. There were a lot of wonderful things that happened on that journey. And I saw myself get to the point of being a Major League Baseball player, and then all of a sudden, I was told I had cancer, and my world was turned upside down, much like many of you here tonight. Wondering what the future held. I was scared to death. I didn't want to die. I was 32 years of age. I was married to a beautiful woman, and I had 2 wonderful kids. And I wanted to live. I wanted to live. And to be perfectly honest with you, all I could think about was that, not baseball anymore. The doctors looked at me and said, outside of a miracle, you'll never pitch again. And folks, I really didn't care whether or not I pitched again. All I wanted to do was live and to continue being the husband that I was and that I am, and the father that I was and that I am, and now the grandpa that I am. And you know, some amazing things happened. You saw in the video, I made this incredible comeback. And against all odds, when the doctors thought outside of a miracle I would never pitch, I was pitching again. Only to see what happened 5 days later when you saw in the video when I fell after breaking my arm and my career came to an end. And from there, the cancer reoccurred, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I went through all this stuff that you are all too familiar with, radiation therapy. I had a staph infection that lasted for 10 months. And then finally the doctors came to me and said, Dave, it's time to remove your left arm and shoulder. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, at that point I thought, good, let's get rid of this so I can get on with my life. And I'll never forget June 18th of 1991 when they removed my left arm and shoulder. And I thought, finally, I am done with all my struggles. And you know what, folks? In many respects, those struggles just began. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to grieve as an amputee, as one who had lost something that brought me such incredible joy. And that pales in comparison to what many of you are going through or have gone through in losing a loved one. I can't even understand that. And it breaks my heart to even think that there are many of you here today who will ride for someone that you lost. But as Steve said, those memories live on through you. You are the legacy that gets to carry on that memory of how important and how special that person was and is in your life. I went into clinical depression. I became a very angry man in the midst of all of that, trying to figure out my life now as an amputee. I'm ashamed to say this, but I became verbally abusive to that beautiful woman who is sitting right here in front of us. I became verbally abusive to my kids, these little kids. And it was all because I didn't understand how to deal and cope with the thing that I was facing. The loss of a career, the loss of an arm, and wondering, what in the world am I going to do with my life? But you know what? The story doesn't end there. And here's why. Because I realized something extremely valuable in the midst of the darkness and the pain. I realized just how much God loves me when I can't love myself. And you know how that happens, folks? You know how that happens? Through people like you. Through this event where you show up for an amazing cause, this wonderful thing called the ride. And why? Because you care about someone. That's why. And God showed up through the love of a woman who shouldn't have been loving me because I was such an idiot. Through the love of friends who came alongside me. Through a counselor who helped me to deal with my problems. And guess what, guys? I started figuring out I wasn't really that good of a communicator. And I learned the art of communicating. I learned the art of being able to talk about the things that I was stuffing inside of me. And you know what I discovered? It's when you start doing that that you really begin to heal. You can't be afraid to say you're afraid. You can't be afraid to say, I don't know what the future holds. You can't be afraid to let somebody into your world because, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do this thing called life alone even when we're healthy. We can't do it alone. We need each other. That's why it's so amazing that Roswell is doing this. That's why it's so amazing that there are so many volunteers. There was a dream to put this ride on and to make it happen. And to do it at a grassroots level. Today, I had the privilege of seeing how amazing Roswell is. I got to visit cancer patients. And those patients were amazing and they were inspiring. I walked in trying to give encouragement and I walked out being encouraged. I was overwhelmed, but I think a big reason why that happened was because of the people that are there every day in the battle. The doctors, the nurses, the volunteers, the researchers who are trying to find a cure to stop this ugly disease once and for all. It's because of their love, it's because of their care, it's because of their concern for the patient and the patient's family that I was encouraged today. I was overwhelmed. I walked into one man's room. I discovered he was a Dodgers fan. I wasn't too pleased with that because I'm a Giant and I work for the Giants these days. And all of a sudden, as we stood there talking, I was overwhelmed. This man actually got up out of his chair to greet me. And as he looked at me and we began to talk, he shared his story with me. Ladies and gentlemen, do you realize, take a moment, just take a moment right now and look to the person next to you, look to the people around you, and realize the power of their stories. Because every story is significant represented here today. Every story. And I was overwhelmed by this guy's story to the point when I walked out, I've never done this, but I did it today. I said, "Go Dodgers." How weird is that? Then I met a young man who was probably in his teens. Jonathan, I'll never forget because Jonathan is my son's name. Jonathan was diagnosed with leukemia, and unfortunately, in the midst of his battle with leukemia and going through the treatments, his immune system went down so low that a bacteria, something invaded his body, and it was going to take his life. 48 hours. This was in January. And I was overwhelmed that I was looking at this young man who had been through so much, so many surgeries. All I could do was look into his face and say, Jonathan, you have more courage than I have ever seen in any young man your age. I am overwhelmed with what you are going through. I just want you to know when I walk out of this room, I will be praying for you. You know what his dad said to me? His dad said, you know what, Dave? I really don't know about this God thing and prayer, but I will tell you this. There have been many people who have walked into this room and have said those very words. And it started back in January, and my son is still alive. I think there's something to this thing called prayer. You know what, folks? That's because of the people in Roswell. That's because of the staff and the volunteers, the chaplains that walk in, everybody that's involved. And today, I hope we recognize that you celebrate them for all that they are doing to try and help you and your families as you face this disease called cancer. You know, this past June 18th, I celebrated my 22nd year as a survivor. So right now, I want to take a moment and I want you to hold your applause because I want all of you survivors, whether it's one day or 50 years, to stand up right now so that we can all acknowledge you. Every one of you as survivors. Yes. Yes. Now, I want to do one last thing before I close. If you are a caregiver today, a family member of that survivor, all too often you are forgotten, and your journey is just as painful. I want all of you to stand so that we can acknowledge you. Please stand, caregivers, family members. Yes. Because you guys are the unsung heroes. You're the ones that are there 24/7 caring for your loved ones, and we can't thank you enough. Many of the fans I talked with at Candlestick Park were saddened by what cancer had done to my life. They'd consider it in so many ways, in so many words, you could see it in their eyes and hear it in their voices. They thought it was a tragedy. Today, I don't feel that way. There's a scene in Field of Dreams where Ray Kinsella tracked down an old ball player named Moonlight Graham. And by the way, if you want to read this quote, you'll have to get the book. I'm going to read it to you, but I know you're going to forget it. Graham's career in the major leagues was so short it wasn't even a flash in the pan. He only played a few minutes of one game in the majors, and he never got a chance to bat. That was decades ago. Graham was an old man now. He had become a doctor, and he had given his life to alleviate what suffering he could in the small town where he lived. Who does that sound like? Bet you can think of a number of doctors right now, can't you? They talked about his experiences as a doctor, and then the conversation turned to baseball. Kinsella couldn't get over how short Graham's career was. For 5 minutes, you were that close to your dream. It would kill some men to be that close to their dream and not to touch it. They'd consider it a tragedy. Graham looked him in the eye and with a wistful smile said, "Son, if I'd have only been a doctor for 5 minutes, now that would have been the tragedy." When I look back over the past several years and see all I've learned from other people who have suffered, all I've experienced of other people's love, all God has shown me of his mercy and comfort, and all the encouragement my small measure of suffering has given to others, I think to myself, if I'd have continued on as a baseball player and missed that, now that would have been the tragedy. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Dave Dravecky, such an inspirational story. When I had heard that he was going to be here tonight, I couldn't wait to come down and meet him and get a chance to hear his story firsthand after reading and seeing the videos. Just a very inspiring man, and I know that if we talk to a lot of you out there, there's some amazing stories too, so it's a real honor to be here tonight. Many of you know that inside the walls of Roswell Park is an incredible synergy of innovation, imagination, and invention.